May 1999. A quiet farm in Surum. Night folds over fields, and a family returns to a place they believed safe. Weeks earlier, anonymous threats in the capital. A device found under a car, a canister left at a door. Fear grew, patient and dark. By dawn, 3 family members were found dead inside the house. Broken glass, signs of forced entry, traces of 2 different weapons, and a single bright sock on the grass. The most chilling detail: the danger came from within the circle of trust. A brother living 200 meters away. Who planned this? Why that night? Welcome to True Crime Vault. Please subscribe, like, and ring the bell. Today, we reopen the Olaru case. Christian Magnus and Murray Olaru lovingly raised their 2 children, Anne, born in 1952, and Per, born in 1954, on their sprawling rural estate in Surum, a tranquil corner of Norway roughly 80 miles outside the bustling capital of Oslo. Their property was a picture of idyllic countryside living, featuring a generous main residence nestled near the whispering forest's edge, a second house perched atop a gentle hill overlooking the farm, and a sturdy barn, a mere stone's throw from the primary home, where the heart of their agricultural endeavors beat strong. Farming wasn't just a livelihood. It was the very rhythm of their daily existence. Both Anne and Per were steeped in its routines from their earliest memories, learning the land's secrets and the satisfaction of honest toil. As the siblings matured into adulthood, however, their aspirations began to diverge, charting distinctly different courses. Anne, with a thirst for knowledge and adventure, pursued language studies in France, immersing herself in new cultures and expanding her horizons. Upon returning to Norway, she honed her professional skills at a secretarial school. While she cherished her family and the familiar comforts of home, a yearning for independence burned within her. Eventually, she carved out a life for herself in the vibrant city of Oslo. There, she married a diplomat, coincidentally also named Per, and ascended the career ladder, ultimately establishing herself as a highly respected personal secretary to Norway's Minister of Defense, a role that placed her at the heart of national security. Her brother, meanwhile, felt an unbreakable bond to the family farm, a deep-seated connection to the land he had helped cultivate since his youth. He found solace and purpose in the familiar tasks, the changing seasons, and the enduring legacy of their family's agricultural heritage. When Christian, their father, finally retired in 1984, he and Marie gracefully transitioned to the secondary house on the hill, leaving Per to assume the daily operations of the farm from the main house. It was understood that he would eventually purchase the property, solidifying his commitment to the land. A decade later, Per found a partner to share his life when he married Veronica, who embraced the rural lifestyle and moved into the farmhouse with him, becoming an integral part of the farm's continued story. While Per's life unfolded quietly in the peaceful embrace of the countryside, Anne and her husband found themselves caught in a terrifying storm of escalating violence in Oslo. The tranquility of their urban existence was shattered by a series of alarming attacks. The first incident struck in March 1997, when a complete stranger unleashed a brutal assault on the couple on a darkened street. After a pleasant evening out, the attack left them shaken and fearful. Months later, Anne made a chilling discovery: a sinister tube-shaped object meticulously taped beneath her car. The police were immediately alerted, and their investigation revealed the device to be a highly dangerous explosive, more than half a kilogram of dynamite, capable of unimaginable destruction. In August 1998, the horror reached a new level of intensity. Anne and her husband awoke in the dead of night to the unmistakable and terrifying smell of gas permeating their apartment. A closer inspection revealed a 5-kilo canister strategically placed outside their apartment door, with a trail of gasoline snaking its way up to the building, a clear indicator of an attempted ignition. It was a failed but undeniably deliberate attempt to trigger a catastrophic explosion, a stark reminder of the lethal threats that loomed over them. Despite an extensive investigation, no suspects were ever apprehended in connection with these attacks, leaving the couple in a state of constant fear and uncertainty. The incidents, however, garnered significant media attention, turning their private nightmare into a public spectacle. Driven by a desperate need for safety, Anne and her husband, Per, were moved to a secure military facility, a temporary haven amidst the chaos. In September, they sought refuge in New York City, where Per assumed the role of consul general, hoping to find a respite from the dangers that haunted them in Oslo. After 4 long months abroad, they cautiously returned to Oslo in January 1999, clinging to the hope that the crisis had subsided and the threats had dissipated. But tragedy struck again. On May 6, 1999, Anne's husband, Per Post, succumbed to cancer, a devastating loss that plunged Anne into profound grief. In the aftermath of his death, unsettling rumors began to circulate, whispers that his illness might not have been entirely natural. Some speculated, in hushed tones, that he might have been deliberately exposed to a harmful substance, a calculated act of malice. NRK Brennpunkt, a respected investigative news program, reported that credible independent sources had linked both Anne and Per to sensitive intelligence-related work within Norway. Per had been stationed in Serbia during the tumultuous 1999 NATO bombing campaign, a role he privately described as the most challenging assignment of his career, forcing him to navigate treacherous political waters, mediate between opposing sides, and combat the illicit arms trade that fueled the conflict. Anne, meanwhile, handled threat management within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, a position that thrust her into the heart of sensitive security matters. While no concrete evidence ever surfaced to confirm the dark suspicions surrounding Per's death, the sense of unease lingered. Just over a week later, on May 15th, an anonymous caller dialed 180 Norway's emergency line and delivered chilling threats, vowing that Anne and her parents would be killed. The police were immediately notified, launching an investigation to unmask the identity of the menacing caller, but the individual remained elusive, adding another layer of fear and mystery to the unfolding saga. On May 22, 1999, a day that coincided with Pentecost, a Christian public holiday commemorating the descent of the Holy Spirit, and celebrated 50 days after Easter, 47-year-old Anne sought solace and refuge in the familiar embrace of her childhood home. Grief-stricken after her husband's recent passing, she longed for the comfort and support of her parents. She parked her car near the secondary house on the property and settled into a basement bedroom, planning to spend the night with her mother and father. The following morning, May 23rd, Christian's brother Hans decided to pay a casual visit to the farm. When he received no response at the front door of the main residence, a sense of unease began to creep into his mind. He circled around the property, his footsteps taking him up the hill towards the secondary house. Behind the house, his eyes immediately landed on a horrifying sight. Shattered glass scattered across the ground beneath the upstairs balcony door, an unmistakable sign of forced entry. A wave of dread washed over him as he cautiously entered the home, his heart pounding in his chest. Inside, he stumbled upon a scene of unspeakable horror. Christiane, Marie, and Anne had all been brutally murdered. Anne was discovered lying on the kitchen floor near the door leading outside, still clad in her nightclothes, suggesting a desperate attempt to escape the carnage. Marie, aged 84, lay lifeless in the living room, also in her nightgown, the tranquility of her final years shattered by violence. An 81-year-old Christian had been mercilessly attacked in his bed. His peaceful slumber turned into a nightmare. All three had been shot at close range. The intimacy of their family bond twisted into a grotesque act of brutality. Police investigators swiftly determined that the intruders had gained access to the house through the broken balcony door. The presence of at least 2 firearms, a .38 caliber and a .22 caliber, pointed to the involvement of multiple killers, suggesting a coordinated and calculated attack. Their initial assessment led them to believe that Christiane and Marie were ambushed while they slept upstairs, their vulnerability exploited in the most callous manner. Crispin appeared to have attempted to retrieve a shotgun stored in their closet, a desperate act of self-defense, but he was fatally shot twice before he could even reach the weapon. Marie, awakened by the violence, fled the bedroom after being wounded, but collapsed after being shot again, her frail body unable to withstand the brutal assault. Hearing the commotion and violence from the lower level, Anne had likely rushed upstairs to investigate, only to be gunned down as she desperately tried to reach the exit. Her life tragically cut short in her attempt to protect her parents. Inside the home, police meticulously collected spent casings from both weapons, providing crucial evidence about the types of firearms used in the killings. They also discovered a partial shoe print left on the broken glass, a potential clue about the perpetrator's footwear. Outside, they found a single hand-knitted wool sock in a vibrant yellow-orange color, an anomaly in the otherwise pristine surroundings. Detectives theorized that the attackers had covered their shoes with socks to avoid leaving clear footprints, and that this particular sock may have slipped off one of them before they entered the house, a potential oversight that could lead to their identification. Investigators quickly concluded that whoever carried out the heinous killings was intimately familiar with the Olaru family. Nothing in the home appeared to be missing. eliminating theft as a likely motive and suggesting a more personal and targeted attack. Given the earlier attempts on Anne's life, detectives strongly suspected that she had been the primary target, the culmination of a series of escalating threats. The timing of her visit to her parents' home only added to their suspicions. Only someone close to the family would have been privy to her plans to stay with her parents that particular weekend, narrowing the circle of potential suspects. This line of reasoning led the police directly to the only surviving Olaru family member, Anne's brother, who resided in the main farmhouse a mere 200 meters away, along with his wife Veronica. Both and Veronica vehemently insisted that they had slept soundly through the gunfire, and only learned of the murders when officers arrived at their door the following morning. However, neighbors cast immediate doubt on their story, reporting that both of their cars, and even their dogs, were conspicuously absent from the property during the night of the killings, raising questions about their whereabouts and activities during the crucial hours. As investigators delved deeper into the complexities of the family dynamics, they unearthed years of simmering tension and resentment between and his father, Christian. Although was meant to assume daily operations of the farm and eventually purchase it, Christian still retained ownership, a source of ongoing friction. After retiring, Christian discovered, to his great dismay, that had falsely listed himself as the farm's owner on tax documents, despite no sale having ever taken place. This act of deception deeply angered Christian, who felt betrayed by his son's dishonesty and concerned about his potential mismanagement of the property, adding further strain to the already fractured relationship. Anne, as the eldest child, stood first in line to inherit the farm, a fact that could potentially complicate Per's long-held ambitions to own the entire estate. Financial disputes further deepened the rift between father and son. Had taken out a loan against the farm, a move that Christian believed had jeopardized its future and stability. The disagreements escalated into a major conflict, leading to a year-long breakdown in communication between father and son, a period of icy silence and simmering resentment. Ultimately, even took the drastic step of bringing his father to court over the sale price of the farm, a bitter legal battle that exposed the deep divisions within the family. The initial court ruling favored stating that Christian had already agreed to a price and could not unilaterally raise it afterwards. However, Christian contested the ruling, vehemently insisting that he had never signed the sales documents attributed to him, claiming that his signature had been forged. Upon careful review, the court's decision was overturned when it was definitively proven that had indeed falsified his father's signature, a shocking revelation that dramatically shifted the direction of the investigation. Detectives now recognized that had strong potential motives, not only concerning Anne, but also his parents, suggesting a complex web of resentment and greed. Anne had reportedly discussed the possibility of dividing the property and selling portions to developers, a proposal that deeply angered who firmly believed that the land should remain unified and ultimately become his sole domain. These developments could have been perceived as serious threats to his future, potentially jeopardizing his control over the farm and his financial security. Investigators also began to scrutinize Veronica, Per's wife, paying close attention to her background and motivations. An ex-boyfriend described her as someone who strategically pursued relationships for financial gain, suggesting that, being significantly younger than she may have been anticipating the inheritance and future control of the farm, seeing it as a path to wealth and power. These long-standing family disputes, the inconsistencies in and Veronica's statements, and the potential financial motives placed them under intense scrutiny as the investigation relentlessly unfolded. 10 days after the murders, police received reports of gunfire emanating from a nearby forest, a seemingly unrelated incident that would soon prove to be a crucial piece of the puzzle. When officers arrived at the scene, they found a woman, Kristen Kokimo, practicing shooting. The officers soon discovered that Kristen was Veronica's sister, a connection that immediately placed her on the detectives' radar, raising suspicions about her potential involvement in the crime. During questioning, her behavior and answers raised further red flags, prompting investigators to delve deeper into her background. Their investigation revealed that Kristen Kokimo had developed strong connections with the Yugoslavian mafia operating in Oslo, a criminal network known for its ruthlessness and its involvement in various illegal activities. Authorities identified the godparents of her son as prominent members of this criminal network, which was involved in weapons trafficking, drug smuggling, and illicit gambling operations, painting a picture of a woman deeply embedded in the underworld. According to police intelligence, some of the mafia's profits were used to fund Kosovo-Albanian guerrilla activities, highlighting the international reach and the dangerous nature of the network. Based on these findings, a search warrant was issued for the home Kristen shared with her boyfriend, Lars Grunejud. Inside, police uncovered a cache of illegal items, including narcotics, explosives, and multiple firearms, confirming their suspicions about the couple's involvement in criminal activities. Among the firearms was a .22 caliber weapon, the same caliber as one of the guns used in the Oularu murders. Although ballistic tests revealed that this particular .22 caliber weapon had not been used in the killings, the ammunition found in the home matched the type used by the .22 caliber weapon involved in the murders, further strengthening the connection between Kristin and the crime. Lars Grunejud was brought in for questioning, expanding the investigation to include 4 potential suspects, each with their own potential motives and connections to the Oularu family. Kristin soon shifted the blame towards Lars, telling police that he owned a .38 caliber handgun, the other type of weapon used in the murders, which had mysteriously disappeared. She claimed that she and Lars had supplied Per and Veronica with firearms and assisted in planning the murders, though she vehemently insisted that they were not present during the actual shootings, attempting to distance herself from the most heinous acts. When investigators pressed Lars about the missing .38 caliber handgun, he initially claimed that he no longer possessed it, saying he had sold it to an unknown buyer. He admitted, however, that he had previously used it for shooting practice in a wooded area near their home. Police meticulously searched the wooded area where he said he practiced and located spent casings from his shooting sessions. These casings matched the .38 caliber ammunition found at the murder scene, providing a critical link between Lars's gun and the killings, and further implicating him in the crime. Faced with mounting evidence, Lars then admitted to giving Per and Veronica weapons, but vehemently denied having any knowledge of a plan to kill the family, claiming that he was simply providing them with protection. However, police's suspicions intensified as Lars and Kristin's stories contradicted one another, raising doubts about their truthfulness and the extent of their involvement in the murders. In the summer of 1999, the Oularu family held a somber funeral service for Kristin, Marie, and in a collective mourning for the lives brutally taken. On June 11, 1999, Kristin Kukimo and Lars Grunejud were arrested for violations of Norway's Weapons Act, the first step in bringing them to justice for their alleged involvement in the murders. 3 days later, on June 14th, authorities also arrested Per Christian Oularu and his wife Veronica, charging all 4 with either premeditated murder or aiding and abetting premeditated murder, a sweeping indictment that implicated them in the gruesome crime. Kristin and Lars's charges were simultaneously upgraded to include the same accusations, solidifying the prosecution's case against all 4 suspects. All 4 suspects were held in custody until November 29, 1999, when the UDS Evading Court of Appeal ordered their release pending further legal proceedings, a temporary reprieve that allowed them to return to their lives while the investigation continued to unfold. On January 3, 2001, the Attorney General formally charged all 4 suspects, Per Oularu, Veronica Oularu, Kristin Kukimo, and Lars Grunejud, with premeditated murder, setting the stage for a high-profile trial that would captivate the nation. The trial opened on April 18, 2001, and the courtroom was filled with tension as the prosecution presented its case, meticulously laying out the evidence against each of the accused. The verdict was delivered on June 22, bringing a measure of closure to the long and arduous investigation. Per and Veronica Oularu, along with Kristin Kukimo, received 21-year prison sentences for murder or aiding in murder, the maximum punishment allowed under Norwegian law, reflecting the severity of the crime. Lars Grunejud was given a 2.5-year sentence for negligent involvement, a lighter punishment that acknowledged his role as an accomplice, but not a direct participant in the killings. Per, Veronica, and Kristin all vehemently appealed their convictions, insisting that they were innocent victims of a flawed investigation, clinging to the hope that they would be exonerated. Lars Grunejud chose not to challenge his verdict, as he had already served much of his time in custody and likely recognized the futility of further legal battles. Prosecutors, however, appealed on the grounds that his punishment was too light, arguing that his involvement in the crime warranted a more severe sentence. The appeal trial began on January 14, 2002, and the proceedings were closely watched by the public, eager to see whether the original convictions would be upheld or overturned. On April 5, the appellate court issued its final judgment, bringing an end to the legal saga. Per Oularu received a 21-year sentence, and in a significant blow, lost any claim to inherit the farm, severing his ties to the land that had been the source of so much conflict. Veronica Oularu also received a 21-year sentence, confirming her guilt in the eyes of the law. Kristen Kirkimo was resentenced to 16 years, a reduction from her initial sentence, but still a significant punishment. Lars Grunewald had his sentence increased to 18 years, a victory for the prosecution, and a reflection of the court's view that his involvement in the crime was more serious than initially believed. Despite their convictions, Per and Veronica have reunited since serving their sentences and continue to vehemently assert that they were wrongly convicted, maintaining their innocence in the face of overwhelming evidence. Determined to prove their innocence and clear their names, they have hired private investigators to re-examine the case, seeking to uncover any overlooked evidence or inconsistencies that could potentially exonerate them. In 2018, a new witness emerged, offering a potentially crucial piece of information. This witness claimed that Lars Grunewald was responsible for the anonymous A180 call made in 1999, the call that had threatened the Olaro family shortly before the murders, a chilling detail that could shed new light on the motives and planning behind the crime. Why this information surfaced decades later remains unclear, raising questions about the witnesses, motivations, and the reliability of their testimony. A cousin of Per Olaru suggested that he had received information from criminal contacts in Oslo, suggesting that the murders were carried out as a contracted hit by two Yugoslav nationals based in Sweden. A sensational claim that would potentially shift the blame away from the convicted individuals. In 2009, private investigator Tor Sandberg identified a suspected Balkan killer, claiming that this individual, along with two accomplices, was responsible for the killings, adding another layer of complexity to the already convoluted case. However, with no concrete evidence to support these claims, they have never been proven and remain mere speculation. Seeking a full review of their case, Per and Veronica submitted a formal request to have the case reopened, hoping that new evidence would lead to their exoneration. Their investigator has delivered an extensive dossier to the commission, responsible for deciding whether old criminal cases should be reinvestigated, presenting over 1,000 pages of documentation, along with 28 video files, in an attempt to persuade the commission to reconsider their convictions. According to the investigator, this new material contains compelling evidence that could potentially exonerate the couple and reveal the true perpetrators of the Olaru murders. In June of 2024, their appeal to have the case reopened was declined by the retrial commission, a crushing blow to their hopes of clearing their names and a confirmation of the original convictions. Since their convictions, all four individuals have subsequently been released from prison, having served their sentences. Per has returned to the family farm, a place forever tainted by the violence and betrayal that unfolded there. The Olaru case remains one of Norway's most shocking and high-profile crimes. A brutal triple murder that exposed deep family conflicts, questions of inheritance, and the unsettling intersection of ordinary life with organized crime and international intrigue. The case sparked widespread media attention, intense public debate, and ongoing investigations, leaving a lingering sense of unease and fascination that continues to captivate the Norwegian public. A constant reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary lives.